camera, break the fourth wall if you want to. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Lights Camera XR. Today with us, we have Ita, who's also on the community board for the Mix Center. Thank you for coming, Ita, and
Hey.
thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's always exciting to want talk to talk story, talk media, and I mean, what better place to do it?
And we have some of your exploration, some of your content that you've been creating over the past few months.
Last few years, yeah. The kind of what we're seeing now was born out of 2020 and the lockdowns. So one of the things that came up. So my vocation or my job is I'm a video producer, and I work with clients to help build their brands through storytelling. And at that time, as you know, everything was shut down. And I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to go out and shoot, so what can I do with my free time? Well, not free time, but what can I do with my time at home, right? And so I thought, well, you know what? I'll work on some of the scripts and stories that I have. Yeah, I can script it, and you know what? While I'm at it, I might even be able to do a little bit of storyboarding. Yeah, so storyboarding, and then I remembered seeing something. And it's a site called Moviola, and it's got little training exercises. And I remember seeing something about animatics because I actually started off my journey as an animator, and so I went on looking for these animatics and stumbled across this thing called Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
And I said, what's this? And then, then we were off to the races.
We're also glad to have you as part of the Unreal Engine community in Tempe and Mesa.
Yeah.
And we do have meetups here at the Mix Center as well as in Tempe for that. So if any of you are interested in learning about Unreal, new to it, or is a professional, please do come by our community meetups. It would be a great place to socialize as well as pass some ideas around and get feedback on. But talking about your video producer career, I went back and looked at a video that you posted 10 years ago on YouTube where you said that you don't really like being called a video guy or a camera guy, but you cut out this niche for yourself as a video producer. Could you tell us more about that?
Sure. So, part of it is tied to my mentor talks about this idea that you don't have to be a tripod, and the idea that your perspective is the most powerful lens you'll ever attach to a camera. I like telling stories. So getting called up going, hey, I need a video guy. Mostly people want you to set up a camera, push a button, and that's about it. And so I never really resonated with being a camera guy or, being a videographer. My background and my interest was always actually in television. And in television, at the time, they talked a lot about producers. Which is very different than movie producers, but which is also different from audio or music producers. So I kind of got the idea of my definition of a producer came from a book called, I think it's Creative Producing from A to Z by Merle Schreiber, something to that effect. And the thing that he had pointed out was, he said, when you go watch a feature film, or when you go to the Oscars, they have all these awards, but who gets the award for Best Picture? It goes to the producer. Now that might mean that I'm a bit of I like to have my hands on all of the elements, and so to me as a producer, that means I'm looking at a holistic perspective of the production, not just directing or lighting or being the DP. I'm looking at the big picture, including I say I do everything from ideation to distribution. So that's kind of where my attitude. Oh, there, that is on there. That's where my attitude towards the idea of being a producer comes from. Like I said, it's different in different genres. Because I tend to gravitate towards TV. The simplest answer would also be I like to think of myself as a showrunner. So.
That's good to know, because I also looked up when you spoke about how you got into this field. On one of your videos on YouTube, you mentioned how Benson was an impacting show as well as a character.
Yes. So, so if you mind, I'll just share my little origin story.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that.
So, originally, I went to school for mechanical engineering, and the idea was I wanted to do robotics and animatronics. I don't know if you remember the original Jumanji with
Yes.
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a Disney behind the scenes with that animatronic lion taking a big swing,
Yep.
and I said, "That's what I want to do. I'm going to be a mechanical engineer." My dad was an engineer. I'm going to be an engineer. So I went to Purdue University and studied mechanical engineering for 3 years. And in 3 years, I got absolutely whooped by thermodynamics.
As most of us do.
Yeah, it was painful. And my parents, very rightfully so, said, "Hey, this whole thing, this doesn't seem to be for you. What is it that you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to do special effects." And I figured, well, if I can't do them physically, maybe I can do them digitally. So I moved back to Arizona and got my first degree in computer animation from the Art Institute of Phoenix. Shortly after getting back, a buddy of mine who was actually in Indiana moved back, lived here in Arizona, and we set about making our first feature-length film. It was a horrible little movie called Night of the Chihuahuas, which is a story about a small Arizona town that was overrun by mutant chihuahuas. Now, bear in mind, there were no chihuahuas in this movie. We had one little stuffed Taco Bell dog, and then a hybrid, not quite chihuahua, not quite chow, mixed dog that was carried around in the film. But yeah, so we had a lot of fun, but it was not. Horror movies was not the thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I decided that I would start my own film company so I could focus on the special effects and things like that. I mentioned Benson specifically for a couple of reasons. One, I have vivid memories of watching that show with my dad.
Okay.
And there was something about that character's personality that really resonated with me. I mean, I think I said in the video, you can see, if you know where to look, you can see traces of that character in my personality now. But I also find that I infuse certain traits from that character into the characters that I create.
So can you tell us more about the Daz characters that you've created and just the timeline and how you've kind of used older versions of softwares to how you've been using them today?
Sure. So Daz is an interesting addition into the workflow. Like I mentioned, back in 2020, I had stumbled upon Unreal Engine and just started monkeying around with it and kind of making environments. And I thought, well, this is kind of cool. And I had, for those who know the reference, this was Unreal Engine 4.24, I think it was, to give you perspective. Or a timeline. And I started creating environments and things like that. And at the time, they had a bunch of assets within the marketplace, but they were all Unreal or Epic characters. So they already kind of were defined. And since I had already gone down the rabbit hole, I started Googling, and somebody in one of the forums had mentioned Daz 3D. And I was like, that name sounds familiar. What is that? What is that? Wait, I think I downloaded that. Turned out like 5 years prior, I had downloaded it because somebody sent me an email saying, Daz is free, get it before it goes away. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah.
So I downloaded it and had it on an old hard drive, but had never used it. So during that period, I opened it up and found out that, oh, wait, I can create any kind of character that I want. With looks and hair and clothes. Now, I should kind of take a step back. Like I said, I had originally gone to school for computer animation, and part of the reason I got into filmmaking, or more traditional film, is because I don't like modeling things. It's a lot of work, and I don't have the patience for it. I just want to make the movie. I don't want to have to build everything out. So, combining Unreal Engine and all of the props, if you will, and Daz 3D, with all the characters and wardrobe, I was like, I've got a perfect combination to be able to combine these and start creating characters and environments and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
moving into the next segment of this,
Yeah.
I'd love to know more about the video that we have playing on in the back.
Okay, so this was kind of the a demonstration of the evolution. So I had mentioned that I did this film, Night of the Chihuahuas, with a buddy of mine, and I think that was back in the aughts, 2002, 2003. No, you know what? It was 2005. Come to think of it, and we made the film years ago, and had a lot of fun with it, did distribution and things like that. Well, fast forward to about 2021, I found out that my buddy had done a deal with one of his friends to take that film and turn it into a comic book, or this is a series of comics, and I don't know how or why it just kind of clicked in my head. It's, well, I've been working on this previs storyboard thing, and if I can go from storyboards to 3D images, going to a comic book isn't that big a leap. So I reached out to a buddy of mine, or I reached out to that buddy, and I said, "Hey, do you have any scripts that I can take a look at? Because I'm doing this thing, and I want to see if I can make it work." And he said, "Yeah, sure. Here you go." So this was an example of taking that screenplay and converting it into a comic. And so the workflow ended up being, I started off with a program called Storyboarder, just to kind of lay out the story, or to lay out the story frames based on the script. And then I built the space in Unreal and built the characters in Daz. Now, if I remember right, at the time, I wasn't able to bring Daz characters into Unreal.
Okay.
But I was able to bring parts of the Unreal set into Daz.
Okay.
So that's the approach that I took. So like that goes from storyboarder to actually laying out or figuring out, okay, what's the blocking gonna look like for the space? And then I went through and did all the lighting.
So this essentially is like your pre-visualization, your tech visualization for what we have now here on the volume with virtual production.
Exactly right. And I think what makes this, I don't want to say unique, but where I decided to go with it was I took advantage of the assets that I already created and did a secondary content line, if you will. I just took still frames from the storyboards, took them into Photoshop, or aligned them in a comic book like frame, and applied and I forget which one it was, but I applied a plugin or a Photoshop action to make it look like it's a drawn element.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like a filter of sorts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's actually, I think it's a preset. You can
cool.
it sets off a series of actions that add multiple filters. But
cool. Wow.
Yeah, that's the basic
Something I
idea.
need to look into as well.
Yeah, there's so many different types of those presets that you can play around with and use. But I feel like this came out as a really good proof of concept, and the idea that I'm creating from a creator standpoint, I'm creating a secondary asset. I always think about the old saying, I think it was attributed to George Lucas, that the money's in the lunch boxes. So, it's one thing to do the film, but what other complementary assets can you create in the process of doing that? So in this case, I think this shows I can create the storyboards, create a comic book, potentially do posters, and then rather than going to an investor and saying, "Hey, I've got this screenplay, would you please look at it and think about maybe giving me money to make it?" I can come in and say, I've already got a series of comic books, I've got these posters, and I've got an audience of X number of subscribers who've been watching the behind-the-scenes development of all of this. I've got a built-in audience ready to go for this screenplay, and I've already got it blocked out. Can we now turn it into live action? That's the way I think about it.
It's really interesting that you bring up this entire workflow because this is what most of the students here at the Mix Center, as well as other indie creators, kind of go through the process of as well, where they learn these multiple softwares, multiple tools, try to like experiment with a lot of set tools, as well as like play around with new tools that might be free or might have a little subscription fee to it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as an indie creator, yeah,
Oh, and
yeah.
not to cut you off, but I think the other asset that I often forget is, now I probably wouldn't do this, or I wouldn't do it by myself, is because I'm building all
Yeah.
of this in Unreal, there's a video game
Yeah.
built in,
True.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, I need to get somebody who's more sophisticated
Yeah.
at the game design of it, but if I've already got most of the set built out and the characters and everything, turning it into a game isn't a huge leap. So.
Yeah. So I was actually wanting to ask you about, so as an indie creator, how do you kind of know where to draw the line and like show it to an audience to kind of get feedback on the stuff that you've been making?
I don't know, but when I figure it out, I think as an indie creator, and I need to get better about this, but I think I kind of have it in my head. I know what the plan is. I'm just, but I want to say in full disclosure, I'm not executing it the way I should. Is a lot of the stuff that we've got playing in the background, that's all behind the scenes content.
Yeah.
I say start showing that to people as early as possible.
Okay.
Because there are going to be people that want to go along for their journey. They want to see it develop. So rather than hiding it, why not make it public? But if you want to get really strategic about it, and again, this is the part I need to get better about, is, I will post some of the production pieces on Instagram, but if you want to see the full behind the scenes, sign up for either my mailing list or my community or my membership or whatever it is, so you get exclusive content and this is essentially what the Patreon model is built on, right? The idea that we're creating content and all the bonus material, all the stuff behind the scenes, all shows up in a place where people can access it. And doing that as soon as possible, I think it's counterintuitive, but I think that's where the strength is. Start finding your early adopters who just, they like the concept and the initial sketches. I'm on board. Let's see where it goes.
What's your method of approaching potential clients or people who you'd like to collaborate with? Would you say it's better to kind of reach out through forums, or what's your method of kind of reaching out to other fellow creatives to collaborate with?
You know what? I'll be honest. That's something that's always been a real challenge, and I think it's because there's a balancing act, right? And I think as a creative, well, let me try to tackle that in a couple of different ways. As a creative, we often have our idea, and we want to do our idea. So if you come to me and say, hey, I want to do this thing, I'm like, great, but I've got plenty of ideas that I want to work on. Something I'm learning more recently, or I'm making an effort to lean into, is understand the team dynamics and play that role. What I mean by that is, a buddy of mine reached out to me recently and said, hey, I'm working on a short film, would love it if you would help. And my first instinct is, I don't do that. Like, I got things to work on. But I also want to develop, and I've been working on my cinematography skills as a DP. And so I said to him, I will come on board as the DP. He's like, oh yeah, you can help in all sorts of places. No. I'm going to be the DP.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to pick the lane that I'm working in. And that's where my focus is, and resist the urge to try to do everything else. So I think to that point, when people are looking to collaborate, I think a lot of creators, me included, we tend to be jacks of all trades.
Yep.
Right? Oh, I can do a little bit of everything, so put me in where you need me. And I think one of the things I'm going to be doing is taking to a more professional mindset, saying, no, this is the role I need you to fill. Can you do this? Can you be a DP? Can you do the sound? I need somebody who can do this. And if someone comes back to me and says, oh yeah, I can do everything. No. I want you to do this. And are you comfortable in just that role? And finding the people where we can align on everybody kind of taking ownership of their creative part in the collaboration, as opposed to everybody's just, yeah, we're just all here
Yeah.
playing around. Like, we're just doing it because we're having fun. Okay, well, I want to actually make something that is going to be something I'm proud of to put out in the world. So I don't want to just have fun. I want to be as organized and focused as possible.
So you spoke about how you've been known as a jack of all trades because you've been dabbling around with software to traditional forms of sketching and
Yeah.
all kinds of media. How do you kind of see software like game engines inform storytelling?
Well, I mean, interestingly, I feel like my answer is it's kind of canned from the representatives of Unreal. You know, I watch their videos and get really interested in kind of the way they describe it. But I think, I mean, I almost resist calling them game engines, but they are, right? I mean, that's technically
Yeah.
what they are. I think that that tool, or these tools specifically, give us the ability to ideate and create faster, more efficiently, and it's just it's a way to get clarity in a way that didn't exist before, and I think that even if you're not going as far as a full virtual production on a production stage, I think there's a lot of value in it. And one of the clips we were looking at earlier, I didn't even think to mention this story, but it was the one where my buddy gave me his script and I
Yes. Yeah.
converted it into a comic book.
Yeah.
Just throughout the process of that, I was going through the script, and I remember it said something to the effect of, and she put her hand on his head. But in the script, the way the script was written, that would have been impossible because they were sitting on opposite sides of the couch.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have ever known that until you got to the day and you set up all the lights and everything, and you said, "Okay, action." Wait, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's no way you would have known had I not gone through the script and just tried to put the characters together, and went, that doesn't work. Okay, so we're gonna have to move this. Oh, he grabs the telephone. Well, the telephone's on the other side of the. Well, that's going to have to move. So I think these tools, like I said, are great for pre-production, pre-planning, precognition. Precognition? That's not like the idea that
Could be a thing.
yeah, I mean, the idea that you can start putting ideas on the board and moving things around and getting a sense of, okay, how's this going to work? As a matter of fact, I in my office, I wanted to rearrange some things, and I said, well, I don't know how I'm going to set this up because I wanted to set up my Zoom calls so they looked nice and all that. So I went into Unreal and just blocked out what my office kind of sort of looks like, and then set up a camera so I could look at it and go. So now I knew where I had these two giant bookshelves. Well, I knew where they were going to go before having to drag them into the room. So I think the ability to quickly fabricate and iterate. I think that's, if nothing else, that's one of the biggest things that we can use, and that's an advantage that I think a lot of people don't recognize. And I think it's because they typically only think about the final product.
Yeah.
They think about the end result of the 3D rendering and all of that. Like, just the process of blocking out a scene, and even if you don't do the full render, all the materials, you have a sense of where everything goes, and you can look around without having to. You can physically move things without having to physically move things.
And it's interesting that you bring that up because in a past life when I was a UX designer before I was working here, I realized that there are some steps that are taken as a UX designer where we kind of put things up on post-its on a board trying to plan out what we want to do. So in the Google sprint process, they call it the how might we's.
Yeah.
And the how might we's inform the ideations and the iterations. And I've been working on a blog to kind of write down how the UX process informs filmmaking and production. And that's something that I've been learning on different sets that I've been on, as well as just speaking to fellow filmmakers like yourself.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see the parallels and how they're connected in different aspects of different creative processes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it a couple of times. I had mentioned a short film I was working on. It was about some guys playing poker, and they're all sitting around a table. Same thing. I created a bunch of mannequins and set them around the table and started looking at, okay, well, based on the script, this guy gets up and walks into the back room. But if he does that, the main character is going to turn. The idea was the guy's supposed to disappear into the back.
So
right?
how might we make them disappear?
Yeah, and do it where the main character doesn't notice, because the main character wasn't supposed to see the light show that goes on in the background. Well, that was it was a simple fix. The other character sitting next to him had to pull his attention. He had to say, hey, and get him to turn his head. We figured that out just in the storyboarding process, going, wait, if he's sitting here and we know the physical room, the hallway's there, he's going to see it. That won't make any sense. How do we fix it? So we added a line to the script to get him to turn his head away.
So that brings me into trying to understand how you've played around with actual movement and motion capture when it comes to working with game engines and animations and the DAZ characters that you've been working with.
So I haven't done nearly as much motion capture as I would like. Most of the animation that I've done thus far comes from animation assets that I found in the Unreal Marketplace. But with the evolution of the rigging, I was able to put what do you call a character rig? Is that
the control rig?
Control rig. Yes.
Yes.
I was able to put a control rig on there, and so while I let the primary animation be driven by the Unreal asset, I was able, I would go back in and make a few tweaks just to make it look, to get the arm to hit where I needed it to, or make it look a little bit more right. So,
That's
and I'm looking at, I've got a little saved folder of all of the platforms, all the animation platforms and tools that will allow you to take live footage and convert that into animation data. Like I said, it's just one other thing I've got to learn, but I've got them bookmarked. I haven't gotten around to it yet. It's funny, if I can, like that's one of the things that is so awesome but extremely frustrating is I keep getting derailed with the possibilities of what could be. Right? Like, this whole thing was supposed to be an animatic, or no, excuse me, it was supposed to be a storyboard. And then it went from a storyboard to being a 3D storyboard, to being an animatic, to, hey, this could be a film. You know what? Now I'm going down the rabbit hole of creating animations. I was supposed to just pose them, take the snapshot, and move on. So that's the only reason I haven't really followed up on extensive animation yet, because I just want to get the comic book done first.
And how is, now with the developments in AI, how has that kind of informed your creative process?
So that's landed on two different levels. The first, I think, is probably writing. So, like, this is a short that I was working on because I wanted to find a project that I wasn't so emotionally invested in that I had to get it perfect. I'm like, I want something simple. And so I spun up a chat in Chat GPT and just started having a conversation saying, okay, here's the basic idea of what I want. I want simple characters, here's the thing. And from the dialogue going back and forth, we were able to map, me and my chatbot, my chat writing assistant, we were able to come up with, I think, a 4 or 5 page short story that we called Time Unraveled. And it's a story about this news reporter who is looking to get an interview with an eccentric billionaire, Jeff Bezos type, and she meets him in this abandoned subway, and he takes her to his hidden lab where he's got a time machine, and then somebody shows up and says, I need your help with the future, and then that's where it ends. Because, like I said, it was supposed to be simple. I'm not trying to make an epic piece. I just wanted something that would be kind of fun, interesting, and visual. So that's a big part of how AI has informed what I'm doing. But now, then there's the generative art, and I don't know if we want to. I've got some clips of those.
Yes.
If we want to take a look at that.
So while we're talking about how AI has informed your artwork, would love to know about how AI has helped you in your sketching process as well.
Sure. So to kind of jump back, I mean, I started all of this again with the idea of stories, of just doing a couple storyboards, and I decided I wanted to get better at drawing. It was something that, I mean, I went to art school and I learned the basics, but it's something I was never really great at. Found a great resource called Learned Squared, and they've got a bunch of different online courses on, and what's cool is that they are kind of organized by software. So there's the Photoshop track and the After Effects track and the Nuke track, and there was one for Unreal. And I found a couple of them that were about sketching, and so I started going through that process and learning how to sketch. I tend to be very digital, so I've got an iPad with an Apple Pencil, and so I threw Adobe Fresco on my iPad and just kind of started learning that process. And naturally, again, technology makes a huge jump, and I'm like, oh God, what happened? But Adobe had rolled out their Firefly model, and the thing that, I think it wasn't the first model, I think it was the second or third, you could provide a reference image for composition.
Okay.
I said, I wonder what would happen if I took one of these sketches that I'm clearly not going to finish and plugged it in as the composition and gave it some text. And I started coming up with some new ways to do concept art.
Wow.
So the way it kind of factors in now is, while I still like the practice of sketching and would like to spend more time doing it, I can take it to a next level by using the composition combined with AI to create art. I think it's also telling that, there's a lot of conflict or consternation around whether or not people should be using AI art. But in my workflow, I'm the one doing the sketch. I'm the one laying out the composition and making the image, laying out the boundaries of the image. The AI is just helping me. It's behaving like a tool. It's not, because it wouldn't do that. It wouldn't have come up with that on its own.
Correct.
Right? So I feel like it's an even more viable and valuable tool because I'm laying the groundwork for it. So
How do you see AI kind of informing more 3D spaces, especially now when 3D is going into game engines, it's going into virtual production, it's going into all kinds of like forward-facing, consumer-facing, and like, what if the person who's kind of prompting this AI gives them something that is not what the public would like? So how do you see this kind of informing creativity when it goes wrong?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess there's a couple of different ways to approach that. I think that happy accidents have always happened.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Jaws wouldn't be Jaws if it worked the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
So I think what we get out of the AI has the potential of being very interesting, or at the very least spark ideas, right? But the one point that I do also want to point out is, like, I think when the general public talks about AI, right, they're thinking of Skynet or Friday from Iron Man, right? We're talking about Chat GPT stuff, right? But in the creative world, let's not forget that, like, AI, for all intents and purposes, it's an algorithm. So randomizing fireflies, and I think when we're looking to get I'm trying to project forward, right? From in the 3D spaces where AI's quote unquote failure will come in handy is when we want things to be randomized and natural, and properly instructing it to, because I don't want to have to worry about every little piece of paper that flies down the street in this virtual space that I've created. I believe it's more of an AI functionality to randomize things, right? And so I think that's something to consider when we're looking at the bigger conversation. It's not all AI is prompt driven creation, right? So, but again, but to your point, for those things where the prompt kind of goes off the rails, I think there's going to be some happy accidents, and for those things that don't work, you just say, okay, well, no, do it again. It's like that isn't right. No. Yeah, and one of the bigger things that I tend to think about is, as an artist, as a creative, that's why I always feel safe. Part of the reason is because AI is going to keep screwing up those little things until someone gets frustrated and goes, you know what, forget it. Would you do this for me?
Yeah.
Let me just hire an artist, because I don't want to go 20 rounds going back and forth with the AI going, nope, that isn't it. Nope, that isn't it. Close, but no, that's not it. Would you? As a matter of fact, there's occasions where that's where I'll jump in. For me, that's part of the reason I don't use as much generated art as you would think, because I would rather just do it in Unreal. I'm like, okay, I can set the cameras up and put everything where I want it, the way I want it. I don't have to keep saying, no, medium shot, medium shot, no, 5 more degree angle, no, a little bit higher. That would drive me nuts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's a combination.
So apart from using Unreal Engine as a way to kind of make your own films and inform shots that you want to shoot out in the real world, what else have you used Unreal Engine for?
What else have I used it for? I know I'm probably just barely scratching the surface of it. To a certain extent, one of the things I've started experimenting with, it's not technically Unreal Engine, but it is. It's the what is it called? Capture.
Reality capture?
Reality capture. Yes. So I started experimenting with that just to be able to scout locations. I've had hit or miss success with it, but again, I've used that to get the basic layout, and then I went into Unreal. I pushed it into Unreal and then blocked it out. So that's something I'd like to experiment with more. I know that it has some new features. I mean, again, we're at what, 5.5 now, or are we at 7.10 since we started this conversation?
Yeah.
But since now that we're in the 5 realm, I know it's got certain compositing components that it can do that I'm really curious to take a look at. I was always in love with After Effects. As a matter of fact, I kind of went through my entire filmmaking career backwards, right? I started with animation to After Effects to editing to then directing to shooting to writing. So compositing has always had a special place in my heart. And I know you can do some of that in Engine. And so I want to take a look at that, some of the graphics that you can create, things like that. I think that'd be kind of cool.
So I wanted to also ask you about, as a part of the Mix Center community board, what's the areas that you serve in, and how do you identify your role in this community board?
Sure. So, like I said, I'm a member of the community board, and it's funny, when I was originally invited to kind of start that conversation, I had no idea what the Mix Center was. I knew that there was a building at the end of the street that was being built for something. I don't know what it is. So, but then some folks had reached out to me and explained to me what was in the building, and I said, "I'm sorry, Unreal Engine, what? I'm sorry, Soundstage, who? Yes, please. Yeah, I want in on that." And I'm a Mesa resident. I actually, just because I kind of hang around with, I tend to hang around with connectors, people who connect with other people. So I don't see myself as a connector myself. I hang around with connectors who are connected to everybody. And that's kind of how I ended up in the slot and on the board. And the subcommittee that I'm on is the faculty community engagement group, which essentially is focused on helping bridge the gap between what's happening in the community or what the community needs and what projects are happening within the Mix Center. I kind of view my role, I think I'm one of the few members on the board that has a media background. Everybody else is very much community driven or community affiliated, and so what they're bringing more than anything else is the voice of the community and the needs of the community, and that's very much needed. I like to see myself as kind of the translator on how to communicate the capabilities of the Mix Center and all the tools and the toys and things like that. And how does that translate into something that we can do in a community engagement kind of way? So I think it's really an interesting opportunity because, like I said, a lot of the folks on the board, like they know the community very, very well. But Unreal Engine, they're like, what are you talking about? What is that? So the idea of being able to hear what some of the needs are from the community and say, okay, here's how one of the film theaters might be able to play a role in that, or this is what we might be able to do with the soundstage or the production, the fabrication studio. It's like, well, how do we get these to go together? Because I think for most people outside this building, they see a big building and they know movie something, and I don't know, like they do movie, like I think they understand if they happen to be walking by, they understand the Sidney Poitier Film School, but I don't think that they recognize or realize that this is a community. The Mix Center is involved in community engagement, and it's not just film students. So how do we get what? And there's a lot of amazing stuff that's going on here that people just don't know about because they wouldn't even think to walk in the front door.
And for those of you all watching, even the space like this, the virtual production volume, is something that we give out for rent as well. And for the Mesa community members, if anyone needs to use the space, they can always contact me and Ita as well, since he's involved in the space too. So now that people know that they can use a space like this, what are some of the possibilities that you see that are possible for Mesa to kind of utilize this space?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis because we've got a few things that you and I have talked about, and depending on when this airs, we'll kind of see where that goes. But I think, I guess where I'll start is one of the things that, as a board, we kind of the first thing that we kind of kicked off was the movies in the park where we're showing movies on the big screen outside. But one of the things that we're looking at is how do we get more people inside? So we're looking at programming, different types of things that will involve the different theaters and the different studios, summer camp type engagements with the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club here locally in Mesa, because like I said, the Mix Center is a very unique fixture here in Mesa. I think it's also because it's got an inherent art quality to it. I think that's why we're really viewing this as the art innovation district, right? I talk about this in different settings where, there's an innovation district down, I'll just say south of here, and innovation tends to get infused with this idea of tech and startups and software as a service companies. And I think we have a unique opportunity to really focus this innovation district on the arts, in a big part due to the Mix Center. So the theaters, yes. Film aspects, yes. But also performing arts, yes. I know upstairs there's the for lack of a better term, wardrobe, like where you can make costumes and things like that. Why not get clothing designers in here and start doing some programming around that, and just kind of building up that and empowering the art community in a way that can't happen anywhere else. Chandler can't do it. Tempe can't do it. Not to the Phoenix can't do it. Not to the extent that we can do it here in Mesa.
And what are some of the projects that are in the pipeline for you that you're comfortable sharing?
Oh God! I mean, I feel like they're all in the pipeline perpetually. So we've seen some clips of like this one in particular. It's called Inseparables. It's a story about a young woman named Ari who just returned home from being exiled, and so she meets up with her old partner, partner in crime, who's decided to go straight and open a wine bar. So now Ari's got to find work in a world where she's best known as being a criminal. So she's got to find good, honest work while dealing with all the absurdity around her. So that's kind of like the main project that I'm working on. And I've got a few others that are marinating in the back of my head. But like I think that's the main one I'm trying to get rolling.
I'm interested to see how it all comes together.
Yeah, you and me both.
And yeah, I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much for coming onto the
Hey,
show.
you bet.
And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, hope to see you around more in the mix.
Yes, indeed.